بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. Dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. So tonight's session is continuation of what we discussed so far about the famous letter of Imam Ali alayhi salam to Malik al-Ashtar as the manifest of governance in Islam. In the last few sessions, last few months, I discussed many topics through the letter, and the last session we talked also some important points about, for example, the importance of having a moderate approach in rule, and the importance of paying attention to maintaining and protecting people's rights, and the importance of the ruler being fair to everyone and not to give any privileges to the people close to them, so on and so forth. What I'm going to cover tonight are also very important points when it comes to understanding the perspective of Islam, as Ali alayhi salam elaborates, illustrates on the duties of someone who is trusted with the authority over the people as a ruler, as a governor. So our discussion tonight would be on what Ali alayhi salam discusses about the relationship between rule and the people, and how this relationship ought to be developed and ought to be established. What kind of relationship a ruler has to maintain with his people. Also, we will discuss the responsibility that the rule has towards the people when it comes to dealing with their flaws and shortcomings. People, they are making mistakes. They are those people who commit certain illegal actions, so on and so forth. What is the primary approach to deal with them? And also Imam's discussion about the importance of transparency, of maintaining a relation of trust with the people, how to address those kind of misunderstandings that sometimes may develop within the society. And finally, if the time would allow me to also discuss this part, is about the criteria that Imam alayhi salam mentions about choosing one's advisors and ministers as a ruler. What kind of people a ruler ought to consult, what kind of people he ought to avoid. And when choosing his ministers, the people who are trusted with dealing with important matters of the country, important matter of the nations, of the people, who should be trusted with these kind of important roles. So all these discussions that I mentioned, these are very important and relevant matters, even in today's politics. So let us understand, let us see what Imam alayhi salam teaches us, and what he teaches Malik as his trusted companion that is going to govern a country like Egypt. So Imam alayhi salam mentions in the first topic about the relationship between the rule and the people, and how a ruler must treat people's flaws and shortcomings. Imam alayhi salam addresses Malik saying that وَلْيَكُنْ أَبْعَدُ رَعْيَتِكَ مِنْكَ وَأَشْنَأُهُمْ عِنْدَكَ أَطْلَبَهُمْ لِمَعَائِبِ النَّاسِ. It's very beautiful. Let the one among your subjects who is farthest from you and most despised in your eyes be the one who is most eager to uncover the faults of the others. The Imam says, this type of people, the ones who are just seeking to find mistakes, to find errors, to find faults, to find flaws of the others, and bring them to your attention. This person had this shortcoming, the other person has this, and just they focus on what people fail to do, and not on what people succeed to do. They only focus on the shortcomings, on the flaws. Imam says, keep these people as far as you can from yourself. Do not let them get close to you. This is very important and beautiful advice from Imam alayhi salam. It's about the kind of the relationship, the rule, and the ruler ought to establish with people. So, because in general, a ruler cannot exert authority over people unless you see the public submit themselves to the rule. So unless the people they accept the rule, unless the people they follow the rule, the authority cannot rule over them. So you need to make people follow you, adhere to you. But how this is going to happen? One can say, arguably, a common practice in the course of history. We can see it. So the examples are so numerous that I don't think it matters to mention, although I would name some. But the common practice is to subjugate people by force, by making them obedient out of fear, making them adhere to rule, follow the ruler by iron fist. So either one pledges allegiance, loyalty, full submission, or gets eliminated. That's you see in many, many, many examples of rules through the history. So let's say, for example, in the history of Islam, people like Yazid. So the whole point of Yazid's decision to kill Hussein ibn Ali alayhi salam was because Hussein defied to pledge allegiance to him, loyalty to him. And throughout the history, even the modern history, you see this similar kind of cases. For example, in the case of the former Soviet Union, and for example, Joseph Stalin, the this is well-known kind of politician and figure of and ruler of the Soviet Union. So there's a famous quote from him about the kind of relationship he sees fit in relationship between people and the authority and the rule. So the famous quote is that he says, "Death is the solution to all problems. No man, no problem." And you see this kind of motto has been manifested in the way that he treated people who oppose them. So just look at the historical accounts about the massacres of millions. That's his motto. That's the way that he thought that the relationship between rule and the people should be. No opposition. A dead opponent is much better than one who is alive. Or even in the case of the, for example, there's also a famous quote from the uh, uh, Mao Zedong, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, who was the founder of the modern China. The quote is saying that the political power grows out of the barrel of a gun. So it's the gun, it's the force that gives legitimacy to the rule, to the authority. And they're just examples. As I mentioned, if you look over many examples of governance throughout the history, even the modern history, you see still this kind of approach. Even sometimes they deny it, but still the approach is there. So how such a method of rule can be identified? There are, for example, maybe signs. One can look into it. So, for example, you can see how the rule treats the kind of the opportunities, take advantage or doesn't take advantage from those opportunities to watch over people and keep them in check. So a ruler, a government, because of the power it has over people, they can find ways to discover people's flaws, to use them later on to blackmail them when needed, to protect the rule, to blackmail them, for example, to not raise against the government, to blackmail them, for example, even sometimes to give to false confessions, so on and so forth. There are so many examples of this, especially, for example, in light of the modern kind of cybersecurity threats. So some governments they manipulate this kind of the vulnerabilities to spy on their people, to policing the people, collecting data so that they can use it when they need to keep people in check. That's what you see again in many countries, even modern countries who claim to be the examples of democracy, so on and so forth. Still, this kind of approach is prevalent. However, a different approach, what Ali Salam talks about, a moral one, that you find it scarcely practiced through the history, is to get the support of the people, to get the people's adherence, not by showing them the iron fist, rather by kind of practicing compassion, by care, by establishing a kind of a strong bond of loyalty and support between the rule and the people. I mentioned before the advice of Imam alayhi salam to Malik when he mentioned وَأَشْعِرْ قَلْبَكَ الرَّحْمَةَ لِلرَّعِيَّةِ, and fill your heart with mercy for the people, وَالْمَحَبَّةَ لَهُمْ وَاللُّطْفَ بِهِمْ, and kindness towards them and love for them. That's the kind of relationship that Ali alayhi salam commands and teaches, that should be the one between the rule and the people, the mass, the public. And you see, this kind of relationship has been manifested in the life of Ali alayhi salam, the life of the Prophet, peace be upon him. When they were in power, the kind of relationship that they had with the people. It is interesting, just to give you an example from the life of the Prophet, peace be upon him. It's about the time that the Prophet established his community, the early kind of the form of Ummah in Medina. And later on, when it came to the conflict with the pagans about the doing Hajj, going for pilgrimage, and the matter of the Treaty of Hudaybiyah. It's interesting that the historical account says that when there was the discussion about the Treaty of Hudaybiyah. Pagans were trying to assess the situation. They were not sure because they thought that they uh, are the ones who have advantage over the Muslims. They could use this advantage to eliminate them. But they were not sure, so they thought to assess the situation. So they asked someone who was very trusted among the pagans, or what ibn Mas'ud. They asked him to visit the Prophet of Islam and to discuss uh, so to talk with him and to assess the situation, looking at the camp of the Muslims, and to see if there are vulnerabilities that pagans that take advantage of to take over Muslims and to finish them off. So Urwat ibn Mas'ud says that so he went to the Prophet and he observed the camp, how the people they interact with the Prophet of Islam and the kind of relationship that they have. And then he came back to the pagans. They asked him of his observation of the situation of the Muslims. So he told them, أي قوم, O my people, والله لقد وفدت على الملوك ووفدت على قيصر وكسرى والنجاشي. By Allah, because pagans also they believe in God. So he says, by Allah, I visited kings. I have visited Caesar, Khusro, so the emperor of Rome, the emperor of Persia, the uh, Najashi. I visited many kings. However, he says, والله إني لم أرى ملكا قط يعظمه أصحابه ما يعظم أصحاب محمد. Wallah, it's very beautiful. It says that by Allah, I never saw companions and the people of one of these rulers, kings, emperors that pay such respect to their leader the way that the companions of Muhammad they do. And then he mentions some examples. It says that وَإِذَا أَمَرَهُمْ ابْتَدَرُوا أَمْرَهُ وَإِذَا تَوَضَّأَ كَادُوا يَقْتَتِلُونَ عَلَى وُضُوئِهِ. Says that when Muhammad command, they hastened, they rushed to obey his command. When he performed wudu, ablution, they almost fought over one another just to take blessing from the drops of the water of his wudu. And then it continues, وَإِذَا تَكَلَّمَ خَفَضُوا أَصْوَاتَهُمْ عِنْدَهُ وَمَا يُحِدُّونَ إِلَيْهِ النَّظَرَ تَعْظِيمًا لَهُ. And then it says that when they were talking in front of him, they lowered their voices in his presence, and they would not fix their gaze upon him out of reverence and out of respect for him. And then his advice for the pagans is that indeed what he presented to you, the treaty that he presented to you, it's better for you to accept it. Because this kind of people, they will not leave Muhammad until they defend him until the last drop of their blood. So you see the kind of relationship that the Prophet of Islam made with his people, not a kind of iron fist approach that people fear him, a kind of relationship built on love, respect, and compassion that people willingly sacrifice themselves for him. That's the kind of relationship that Ali alayhi salam instructs Malik that this is the kind of relationship that you should have with your people, a kind of relationship built on compassion, trust, and love, mutual love between the people and the ruler. And you see, in contrast to the Iron Fist approach, one of the signs of this method of ruling, this method of this kind of relationship between rule between the people and the ruler, is that you see that the rule resists the temptation to use people's flaws against them, to blackmail them for its own benefit. Rather, it tries to help people cover their flaws, cover their shortcomings, and help them to overcome them, to fix them. It's like a father who cares for his children. Instead of exposing them, instead of punishing them, tries to help them and improve them. And this is why the Imam alayhi salam mentions that, O Malik, the kind of people who try to ruin this kind of relationship, the kind of people who, instead of helping you cover for your people, helping you build this kind of fatherly relationship with your people, but rather they are looking for the flaws of people to use against them. Make sure that they are the last type of people that get in touch with you. Do not let them get close to you. So what Imam alayhi salam, the kind of the policy, the kind of method that Imam alayhi salam suggests is totally in contrast to the kind of policy, the kind of policing approach. So the kind of the having the kind of the intelligence services taking over the kind of information of the people, checking people, kind of the having spying on them, collecting information and then using against them. That's not what Ali alayhi salam sees appropriate as a relationship between rule and the people. And then Imam alayhi salam explains that فَإِنَّ فِي النَّاسِ عُيُوبًا, because people, they have faults. الْوَالِي أَحَقُّ مَنْ سَتَرَهَا, and the governor is the most entitled to cover them, not to expose them. Be like a father. فَلَا تَكْشِفَنَّ عَمَّا غَابَ عَنْكَ مِنْهَا. It's very beautiful. So do not uncover what is hidden from you of them. Do not try to find their flaws. Do not try to uncover their shortcomings. Maintain this relationship of trust and compassion among you. And you see, this is what is manifested in the Imam's own practice when he took the rule. So although he is the Imam, we believe that he is Khalifatullah, the representative of divine. So he could have access to divine knowledge, divine access to unseen, if he desired, asking Allah to, for example, to expose someone's thoughts, for example, what one conceals about him, the kind of the intentions that one harbors, the bad intention one harbors against him. However, that's not what Ali did. He always relied on grace, compassion, covering for people, forgiving people. And you see, for example, the example of the Battle of Camel, Battle of Jamal, when Imam succeeded in standing against the threat, winning the war, the battle. Imam didn't kind of pursue and, for example, follow up, kind of torture, kill the ones who lost the battle. The moment the battle was over, Imam forgave them. So including the Lady Aisha and the others, were forgiven by Imam alayhi salam. Imam just wanted to uh, stop the threat to the community, but was not going to. So unless, for example, if there are examples of people that Imam knew that they are uh, planning to pursue it, but in for the many of the people who were on the uh, opposite camp with Zubair and Talha and the Aisha and so on and so forth, what Imam alayhi salam did, Imam forgave them. Because this is the method that Imam relies on it in forgiving people's flaws, as long as they do not intend to repeat it, as not they do not intend to hurt the others. And again, this very beautifully goes in line with the practice of the Prophet of Islam. What Quran mentions in chapter Tawbah, verse 61. وَمِنْهُمُ الَّذِينَ يُؤْذُونَ النَّبِيَّ وَيَقُولُونَ هُوَ أُذُنٌ. And among them, these hypocrites, munafiqeen, are men who hurt the Prophet. يؤذون النبي. يقولون هو أذن. They say he is ear. They meant that he's just lending his ear to every news we say. So they were uh, uh, kind of talking with the Prophet, lying sometimes, saying things that didn't have any truth to it. And the Prophet, peace upon him, appeared to them that he is just accepting whatever they say. However, the Quran reminds them, says, no, that's not what you thought. قُلْ أُذُنُ خَيْرًا لَكُمْ. He is the ear, but not the kind of ear you see. He is the best ear for you. In other words, one understanding, one interpretation is that the Prophet could understand that you are lying, you are trying to deceive him, you are exaggerating. However, he didn't want to expose you in front of the other Muslims. For example, when you came to mosque talking to him and the other Muslims are sitting around. We have in one of the hadiths that later Allama Tabawi mentions in Sunan al-Nabi about the way that the Prophet was were treating the kind of people coming and telling lies to him. Instead of saying that you are a liar, the Prophet was saying that he says something. So his account of something, of this story. So just the Prophet was trying to cover for them, to respect them, despite the wrong actions they were doing. And that's what you see in the approach and the lifestyle of Ali alayhi salam and his manifestation for governance in Islam. Then, so again, it's the kind of the relationship I mentioned before. It's kind of fatherly relationship, and you can understand it beautifully in the example of a father who has a son who failed his responsibilities, and out of embarrassment, he tries to make excuses, even lies, in front of the other members of the family. And the father knows that he is doing wrong, but the father realizes his flaws, that he's embarrassed. He tries to somehow uh, uh, keep face, somehow to protect his face, to protect his reputation. So graciously, the father, not only he does not expose his lies, sometimes he covers for him as well, just to later on help him to improve himself, to improve his personality, not to use this kind of the wrong means, and to fix his flaws. And then Imam alayhi salam explains what is the duty of the ruler here when he encounters the flaws of the people. So Imam alayhi salam says, فَإِنَّمَا عَلَيْكَ تَطْهِيرُ مَا ظَهَرَ لَكَ وَاللَّهُ يَحْكُمُ عَلَى مَا غَابَ عَنْكَ. You are only responsible for purifying those kind of mistakes and flaws in the community that becomes apparent to you, while Allah is the one judges what is hidden from you. You are not expected And you are not, and this is not recommended, and it's not the right thing to do, that you look for the flaws of the others and uncover them. No. If Allah led those flaws to be seen, if someone, for example, dares to commit a grave sin in public and insists on in doing this, yes, then as a governor, you have the responsibility to protect the community, to purify the community, to not let those kind of for example, someone who is drinking alcohol, to do it in public, to violate the boundaries. However, you are not responsible, and you are not even allowed to investigate the private life of the people, what they do, as long as they didn't bring it to the public. So you are only responsible for protecting the public, not the private life of the people. So Imam continues, فَاسْتُرِ الْعَوْرَةَ مَا اسْتَطَعْتَ يَسْتُرِ اللَّهُ مِنْكَ مَا تُحِبُّ سَتْرَهُ مِنْ رَعِيَّتِكَ. Imam says, so conceal faults of the people as much as you can, so Allah may conceal from your people what you love to keep hidden. So if you love for Allah to conceal your flaws from your people, then you be like that as well. Conceal the flaws of your people from the others. Do not expose them. Do not ruin their social identity. So that's very important point that goes in line again with the fundamental principles of our faith. So you see in the first of Quran, chapter Hujurat, the face that many of the verse that many of us we memorize the verse. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اجتنبوا كثيرا من الظن إن بعض الظن إثم ولا تجسسوا ولا يغتب بعضكم بعضا. So the verse of Quran guides us, avoid suspicion, avoid this kind of building a relationship between you and the others, and suspecting one another, and avoid spying on one another. Avoid looking for other people's flaws, other people's mistakes. You see, this is the teaching of Quran that Ali alayhi salam structured it and formed it in his manifestation of manifest of governance in Islam. So the teaching of Ali alayhi salam are rooted in divine teachings, in the Quranic teachings. So going to the next point, Imam alayhi salam also reminds Malik of an important matter in with respect to rule, and that's his responsibility to resolve conflicts between him and people, and to make sure that this relationship of trust and compassion does not get hurt and ruined. So Imam alayhi salam says, أطلق عن الناس عقدة كل حقد واقطع عنك سبب كل وتر. So Imam says, O Malik, untie from people's heart every knot of resentment towards you. So make sure that if there are resentments in the hearts of the people, explain to them, interact with them, address those misunderstandings, and make sure that they are being addressed, so the heart becomes clear to you. Some commentators understood this part as is about the rulers' kind of attitude to people. So they translated as untie from your heart, not the people's heart, every knot of resentment. But I think the first one better fits with the context. Although both of them they are very meaningful. So the point is that do not let any resentment to uh, make a barrier between you and the people. So Imam says, وَقْطَعْ عَنْكَ سَبَبَ كُلِّ وِتْرٍ, sever the cause of every grudge against yourself. This is a very important point that Imam Salam talks about. So make sure that your people, they have a clear vision of what you are doing. Make sure you address this misunderstanding. Make sure you are transparent with your people. This is what it is very much emphasized in modern concept of rule, the kind of trust within people and rule and transparency of the rule with the people, and letting them see that they are considered, they are trusted in decision making in the rule. Let them see that what the government is doing is for their own benefit, and the government is responsible to make it clear for them. And that's what Ali Salam says, that you ought to look at this kind of misunderstandings and address them. And this is also goes beautifully with the teachings of the Quran, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addresses the Prophet, peace be upon him, and advises him to consult people, وَشَاوِرْهُمْ فِي الْأَمْرِ. So one can ask themselves, why someone who is divine messenger, who has access to unseen knowledge, to divine knowledge, who can have access to a kind of knowledge that does not have any fault in it. Why should one in that status consult people? Even in the case of the Battle of Uhud, it is said, some historical accounts says that the Prophet's own opinion was for the Muslims to fight within the Medina, not to leave the city, just to take advantage of the protections that the city was going to offer them. However, since the majority of the companions of the Prophet who he consulted on so they were the companions who were familiar with the art of war, they thought that taking a position out of city would be better for them. And the Prophet approved the collective opinion, the intellectual, the collective, and the collective intellect, the collective reason of the community. And I think one of the reasons is that what Imam alayhi salam mentions is about the trusting people and showing that they matter to you, their opinion matters to you, and make sure that they see it clearly. Avoid any misunderstanding here. This is what also brings a kind of unity between the people and rule. And this is what makes the rule strong, because the people wholeheartedly believe in it, defend it, support it. And then Imam alayhi salam addresses the next point, mentioning that it's also important for you to make sure that you are not taking any action unless you are totally clear on what you are doing. وَالتَّغَابَ عَنْ كُلِّ مَا لَا يَلِحُ لَكَ. And do not take actions towards whatever is not clearly apparent to you. This is also very, very important principle of governance, that if someone who is responsible with ruling and guiding a country, a nation, a people, one is not allowed to make rush decisions. One ought to conduct appropriate investigation before making a decision or before judging a matter that one doesn't have a clear picture of it. One can say that the main reason behind many failed government decisions, many failed principles, or that they were not being built on enough investigation, enough research, enough uh, deep looking into the matter. So they rush to a decision, lacking enough research, enough investigation, not uh, being comprehensive in terms of considering different aspects, and then they regret it. So Imam says, make sure you are not making a decision unless you are clear on what you do. And this is also very important about the relationship between the governance and the ruler and the rule and the people, because a rushed kind of, so in many cases, these are this kind of rushed decisions that leads to wrongdoing and wronging innocence and making rush judgments that hurts people and ruins the kind of the trust between the people and the rule. So Imam is very clear on this. Make sure that your relationship with people is built upon trust, upon love, upon compassion, upon a fatherly care for them. Make sure if there is any resentment among them, don't let it to go to uprising, to violent opposition. Address it just when it appears. Make sure that your people understand you and what you do. And when it comes to making decision, make sure that you are clear on what you do and you know what is the right thing to do. Make what is needed. So make sure that you do the enough investigations, you look at different aspects, and you take and you make a kind of informed decision in guiding your community, in guiding your people. So again, these are very beautiful and very insightful uh, kind of instructions, principles for governance. Again, just imagine that these kind of very advanced, very moral, and even kind of intellectually solid kind of instructions, these are were given to us 1400 years ago, before there was any kind of notion, the concept of modern kind of governance. And you see in some aspect what Ali says even is much more advanced and more kind of forward looking than what is practiced today in the modern community. And Imam goes in the next to, so in the next part of the letter, which I think I don't have time to cover it, but just to give you a picture of what, inshallah, I will cover in the next session. Imam talks about the importance of picking right advisors and right ministers. Imam alayhi salam, so I will discuss it, inshallah, in the importance of the consultation in Islamic thought and from the teachings of Quran. And then Imam alayhi salam, when he uh, instructs Malik that you as a governor, as a ruler, you ought to consult people and advisors who can give you the right opinion. However, you ought to avoid consulting certain people. Do not consult them. Be careful. Do not let their opinion to lead you astray. And the same goes about picking ministers. So as a ruler, as a governor, you need ministers to take care of different matters like finance, like, for example, war, military matters, so on and so forth of your country. But who you should choose and who you should listen to. What are the characteristics that you should look for them? These are the kind of the points that, inshallah, we would cover in the next session. Again, the letter is very beautiful, very insightful, and has a lot room for reflection on it and to understand the depth of the insight and the knowledge and the wisdom of Amir al-Mu'minin alayhi salam, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us the blessing to benefit from the treasures that has been trusted to us, inshallah. Please recite a salawat.